Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Autoimmune Fix: How to Stop the Hidden Autoimmune Damage That Keeps You Sick, Fat, and Tired Before It Turns into Disease, by Tom O'Brien, D.C., CCN, DACBN. Narrated by Jonathan Yen. Publisher's note: this audiobook is packaged with bonus material, which has been included on the first audio and MP3 CD. If you downloaded this audiobook in a digital format, please visit Tantor.com and type The Autoimmune Fix into the search box. Follow the link to the book's page, then click on PDF Extra 1. When prompted, enter the access code CHRONIC to access the bonus material. Forward. The number of people in the United States with chronic conditions is rapidly rising. It is predicted that by the year 2030, close to half of the entire population will be diagnosed with some form of chronic disease. This has many implications. First, it means that more people are getting sicker earlier in life. Second, it's predicted that by 2044, the cost to Medicare and Medicaid to treat these chronic conditions will be more than all of the taxes collected by our government. What's more, the most common chronic conditions are grouped as autoimmune diseases, in which the body, in an effort to protect itself, is attacking instead. How are we as a community going to deal with this? The answer is that health doesn't happen in the doctor's office. Health happens where we live, in our kitchens, where we cook, and where we eat. I strongly believe that the fork is the most powerful tool we have to transform our health, and I know that my friend and colleague Dr. Tom O'Brien agrees. Today, we know that the foods most of us were taught to enjoy our entire lives, and many of us still eat every day, are actually making us sick. These foods include wheat products, as well as sugar, dairy, and commercially processed fats. Once you can understand this fact, you're going to change your relationship with the foods you're eating, and you're going to feel better. This book provides that lesson. The traditional medical community is partly to blame for the health problems millions of us are facing. When we suggested that the answer to fighting obesity was a low-fat diet, we told our patients to eat whole-grain pasta and bread and margarine. Yet over the years, we found, in fact, that our advice was wrong, because the exact opposite happened. Low-fat eating wasn't the cure for the obesity epidemic. It was a primary cause. I call the result diabesity. Now we know that eating foods high in the right fats makes you thin. Sugar makes you fat. And flour products, which the body converts into sugar, are one of the biggest triggers of the diabesity epidemic. The way in which we grind flour and the way in which it's grown produce wheat with a much higher starch content compared to what our ancestors ate. The average whole wheat bread has more sugar content than sugar. If you have 2 slices of whole wheat bread, you're going to raise your blood sugar more than if you ate a candy bar. In this book, you'll learn that not only does this increase in blood sugar lead to obesity, it creates the silent killer of inflammation, which is at the root cause of most chronic illnesses doctors treat every day. So if you think, I'm having whole wheat bread, that's a good thing, it's healthy, Dr. O'Brien is here to clear up the confusion. Most food industry companies are adding whole grains to their products to make them sound healthy, just as we had low fat assigned to food labels 10, 20, 30 years ago. Dr. O'Brien is going to teach you how to get them out of your diet. The truth is, any kind of gluten-containing flour product is a problem for the majority of people. Over the years, I've seen more than 15,000 patients at the Ultra Wellness Center in Lenox, Massachusetts. There is nobody who comes into my office, not one single person, who doesn't get a gluten sensitivity test. Anybody who has any chronic illness or any of its symptoms is considered gluten guilty until proven otherwise. If you are one of the many millions of people who know that they don't feel quite right, but don't know exactly why, this book is for you. The information you're about to hear takes you outside of the traditional healthcare system that is not providing the answers that you are looking for. Instead, you'll learn how to implement strategies to change your everyday behaviors so that you can begin to feel better, lose the weight you want, and regain your energy. This exciting new book may be your first introduction to the world of functional medicine. Dr. O'Brien and I, as well as thousands of doctors and health practitioners around the world, believe that functional medicine is the future of medicine. It seeks to identify and address the root causes of disease and views the body as one integrated system, not a collection of independent organs divided up by medical specialties. Functional medicine practitioners are specifically trained to treat the whole system, not just the symptoms. In this way, we can address the underlying causes of disease, often with the least invasive means possible. This line of thinking brings us back full circle to your fork. By choosing the right foods and avoiding the wrong ones, you can break your addictions to sugar and carbs, lower inflammation, and take back your health. You'll also learn how to accurately diagnose the underlying problems that are pushing you further along the path to poor health, or what Dr. O'Brien refers to as the autoimmune spectrum. Tom and I went through our original functional medicine training together almost 20 years ago. He is, without a doubt, part of the solution to the current health crisis, as he teaches thousands of health practitioners across the globe every year about the autoimmune spectrum. His gluten-free lifestyle and life story provide the best examples for the rest of us to follow. Adapting his suggestions, you too will become part of our community, get to better health, and improve your quality of life. Mark Hyman, M.D., Director of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, Chairman of the Institute for Functional Medicine, and New York Times bestselling author of The Blood Sugar Solution, The Blood Sugar Solution 10-Day Detox Diet Cookbook, and Eat Fat, Get Thin. Introduction. As millions of people desperately seek solutions to an epidemic of mysterious and debilitating health issues, I'm going to show you that the underlying cause of many of these diseases is related to your immune system, the mechanism in your body that is designed to protect you, yet is so overwhelmed it is unintentionally doing you a whole lot of harm. When the body attacks itself and causes organ and tissue damage, we call the disorder autoimmunity. A person can go a lifetime with the earliest symptoms of autoimmunity, which can include joint pain, weight gain, brain fog, gut imbalances, depression, mood disorders, and fatigue, without ever receiving a diagnosis of a disease. Instead, you're told by doctors or well-meaning family and friends that you're fine, it's just stress, even though your inner voice may be telling you that something's wrong. The doctors who evaluate these symptoms are well-intentioned, but because nothing shows up as a crisis on a blood test, you might have received generic advice like lose weight, get more sleep, eat cleaner, or reduce your stress. Or worse, you might walk out of the doctor's office with a prescription for anti-anxiety medications to help you calm down. It's no wonder we lose hope as our conditions worsen, mystified as to what could possibly be wrong with our health. After all, our doctors said we're healthy. The truth, and what I'd like to share with you in this book, is that autoimmunity occurs on a spectrum. You don't wake up with diabetes one day. It develops slowly, almost imperceptibly, over time. You don't wake up with Alzheimer's disease either. It's a decades-long process with many steps of progression over the years. Scientists now know that for autoimmune diseases, including diabetes and Alzheimer's, the process starts as early as your 20s or 30s, with multiple steps of declining health along the way. In the case of Alzheimer's, it might begin with brain fog, then forgetfulness, confusion, memory loss, and eventually dementia. For diabetes, the spectrum might begin with food cravings, then blood sugar imbalances, hypoglycemia, next metabolic syndrome with weight gain, then followed by neuropathies, numbness and tingling that come and go, and finally a diagnosis of diabetes with a high risk of heart disease. Aside from our discomfort, the largest problem we face is that a medical diagnosis can occur only after there is significant tissue damage. By then, the fix is severe. A lifetime of medications and an uphill battle to reverse disease. While science has been making clear advances in the treatment of many of the 80-plus autoimmune diseases, wouldn't you like to know, sooner rather than later, if autoimmunity is causing your symptoms? The stakes are high. Currently, in the United States, the number one cause of morbidity and mortality, meaning getting sick and eventually dying of some disease, is your immune system trying to protect you. Doctors and researchers have known for decades that the primary cause of getting sick and dying in the world is cardiovascular disease, with cancer being second and autoimmune diseases as a whole third. However, there is a paradigm shift occurring in understanding the development of heart disease and cancer. What was originally perceived as a lipid, fat, storage disease of the arterial wall, atherosclerosis, is now recognized as a chronic inflammatory disease. From this perspective, and with the knowledge that the only system of the body addressing inflammation is your immune system, we now believe that the immune system triggers are the number one mechanism behind getting sick and dying. I should know. Autoimmunity and gluten sensitivity, one of the most common mechanisms for launching the immune system into action, have been my world for the past 25 years. I've educated hundreds of thousands of members of the general public and tens of thousands of doctors, nurses, and nutritionists across the globe about how food selection, digestion, nutrition, and autoimmunity affect overall health. What's more, my own health story, as well as what my family has experienced, exemplifies the drama of the autoimmune spectrum. My journey. I was not one of those men who always knew that they wanted to be a doctor, or who were motivated to become one because of a first-hand experience with chronic illness. In fact, I always thought I was a healthy kid. Growing up on the streets of Detroit, I had a passion for martial arts. In my early 20s, I was introduced to Aikido, a form of martial arts that has been called moving Zen. This practice resonated in my soul, the premise of removing resistance and redirecting powerful energy and letting the body flow. Even though I'm now known the world over for my work on autoimmunity and gluten sensitivity, believe it or not, in my early 20s I was a baker in an organic restaurant in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ironically, I used to bake the best bread. People would come from miles around for my unleavened whole-grain organic bread. I'd bake 48 loaves a day of this fabulous, really good bread by hand. I was so hungry all the time when I was younger. I remembered that I would often take the bread out of the oven, slice off an end piece, spread peanut butter over it, then drizzle honey on it and lay sliced bananas on top. I thought I was being so healthy. It was whole wheat bread and organic peanut butter and honey. The bananas were natural. Honey is natural and certainly better than processed sugar. Yet feeding that one hunger craving was probably the worst thing I could have been doing for my health. I was eating a blood sugar time bomb. I was hungry and tired all the time because of my own chronic low blood sugar, but this snack was flooding my body with the equivalent of 4 Snickers bars. I'd feel great for a while, but the unavoidable crash would happen about an hour later, and I'd be exhausted all over again. Do you ever notice that you're tired and yawning about an hour after your last big meal? This spike and crash create the typical roller coaster ride that many of us notice. I was just trying to live the healthiest life I could, so I kept eating my organic whole wheat bread, not recognizing the damage it was causing. At the same time, being a long-haired, back-to-nature hippie in Ann Arbor in 1970, I had a circle of friends who started reading articles about food and nutrition in Prevention magazine. I remember noticing the articles by Jonathan Wright, M.D., from the University of Michigan, which is where I was studying. His point of view was my first introduction to health care, even though I was more interested in pursuing martial arts at the time. After graduation, I decided to follow my passion, to learn as much as I could about Aikido, this gentle martial art. I moved to Japan and lived in a martial arts school as a deshi, honing my craft and cleaning the toilets for the Grand Master. Physically, I never felt better. My energy and endurance were up, and I was experiencing a full and joyous life. It's just occurring to me now, in writing this book, that one of the reasons I was so clear-headed and performed so well physically was that my diet was primarily rice, which doesn't have the toxic gluten proteins found in wheat. I had left my Western diet behind. Yet after a while, I was aching to get back to the United States. I had met my future wife before I went, and I missed her. So I came back, and we were married within 6 months. My wife suffered from back pain that stemmed from an accident when she was 12. The pain would flare up so severely that she would have to be hospitalized in traction for a week at a time. While I was searching for a new career and trying to find a way to relieve her pain, I met Dr. Harold Swanson, an 84-year-old chiropractor. When I first went to his office, I had to carry my wife in. Yet when he was finished, she could walk out. There was something about Dr. Swanson and the energy of chiropractic that reminded me of Aikido, which translates from the Japanese to mean, get out of the way and allow the energy to flow. That same theory is the premise of chiropractic, that the body can heal itself by freeing its energy flow. The link between the two disciplines was remarkable, so I decided to become a chiropractor. It took me a while to notice that I wasn't feeling well once I started back on my regular eating routine. I was at my physical peak after training with elite Aikido practitioners. I was excited about getting married and thinking about what was in store in my future. Looking back, now I know I was running on adrenaline. Had I not been in the greatest shape of my life, I would have felt symptoms sooner. In 1978, we moved to Chicago so I could study at the National University of Health Sciences, the most research-oriented chiropractic school. During my first weekend, I attended a seminar by Kirpal Singh, M.D., a visiting scholar from Los Angeles, whose lecture on electroacupuncture literally changed my expectations of what a doctor could discern. He shared an anecdote of a 42-year-old woman that I remember verbatim to this day. The woman had come to see him because she had just been diagnosed with adult-onset diabetes. After his initial examination, he told her, "I believe that when you were a young child you had a virus, and it almost killed you. The virus settled into your pancreas, causing inflammation and upsetting your hormone balance to the point where you developed hypoglycemia. You've had hypoglycemia for the last 35 years. Now it just progressed into type 2 diabetes." Dr. Singh recalled that the woman was shocked and said, "Doctor, you're right. I did have hypoglycemia for many, many years, but I never was sick as a child." He calmly replied, "Yes, you were. If your mother is alive, call and ask her." The woman called right from his office, and he recounted the conversation. "Hi, Mom. I'm in a doctor's office. Everything is fine, but he just told me that I must have been deathly sick as a child." "Was I really?" Her mother replied, "Honey, it's true. You were so little and our doctor was out of town. We tried everything because you had a really high fever, including putting ice packs on your feet. We didn't realize it at the time, but you almost died." When I heard the story in its entirety, I just sat there, amazed. How did he know? The next weekend, Sheldon Deal, D.C., a former Mr. Arizona bodybuilder, came to lecture. Dr. Deal's talk was given in a hotel just off campus, and the stage featured a working color TV without volume. He opened his briefcase and took out a magnet about the size of today's smartphones, held it up, and walked over to the television. The picture on the television went upside down. When he walked away from it, the picture went right side up. Walked to it, it went upside down. He said, "That's what electromagnetic energy does to your nervous system." Back in 1978, people were first starting to wear electronic watches. It was the new big thing, and people were concerned. Today, the batteries in cell phones or Bluetooth devices are of even greater concern and might be contributing to inflammation in the brain and the development of brain tumors. This information made me realize that our environmental exposures can have a silent but profound impact on our health. Just like the previous weekend, I sat there in awe. This was certainly not the status quo of any medical education with which I was familiar. I was fired up to learn all that I could. I realized that chiropractic care meant so much more than manipulating bones and muscles. It also focused on diet, nutrition, environment, and what was later to be organized as the principles of functional medicine. During my last year of study, my wife and I were trying to start a family, but we were having difficulty conceiving. I picked up the phone and called the 7 most famous holistic doctors I'd heard of, and every one of them graciously took the time and gave me their advice. Each expert contributed one piece of information that helped me solve the puzzle, including something radical: going gluten-free. So I put a program together based on all of their recommendations, and in 6 weeks we were pregnant. One of the critical components that we addressed was gluten and dairy sensitivities, and we both began to change our diet. I started running again, and my marathon times were better than ever, but I never connected my increased performance to my new diet. Good friends of ours quickly asked if I would help them get pregnant. They, too, had been through artificial insemination, and nothing had worked. In 3 months, a second woman was pregnant. I was ecstatic to see that I could help people who were suffering from hormone imbalances and infertility, and I couldn't wait to open my practice. I decided to focus my practice on treating couples with hormone imbalances and infertility. When I graduated in 1980, I opened my practice, having already lined up 33 women as potential patients. I created a comprehensive, holistic approach to health care. I also took on leadership roles. I was, at one point, the president of the Illinois Chiropractic Society, and I was also responsible for initiating massage as a reimbursable therapy. In the early 1980s, I formalized the claim submission process by carefully documenting and standardizing the therapeutic value of massage for musculoskeletal concerns. As my practice grew, I realized that patient after patient had food sensitivities that I could spot by putting them on a gluten-free diet. In fact, many of the women I saw with hormonal imbalances had a problem with gluten, manifesting as either PMS, infertility, amenorrhea, or unexplained miscarriages. We tested each of the women for celiac disease, and the results usually came back negative. This was a problem, because at that time, celiac was the only accepted disease linked to a wheat allergy or sensitivity. But the patients' bodies never lied. Their issues resolved or made significant improvements when they would follow my advice to avoid wheat completely. Back then, science had no accepted way of confirming this, but I knew what I saw. Hundreds of my patients were responding favorably to a gluten-free diet. This realization, and the subsequent treatment protocol I developed, got me into the world of treating gluten sensitivity with or without celiac disease. Meanwhile, my own health was suffering, and I didn't even know it. At 40, I was a long-distance runner, still trim and with a nicely performing body. Then I was diagnosed with a cataract, which is very unusual for a healthy 40-ish man. I took a few days to research the problem and found out that high lead levels can be a trigger for cataracts. But who has high lead levels in this day and age? I was certain it wasn't me, but I did the tests anyway. Wouldn't you know, I had the highest levels of lead poisoning of any of the hundreds of people I had ever tested. I reviewed my timeline, as life experiences often shed light on a problem, and I remembered that during the first 8 years of my life, my family lived in Detroit, just across the river from Ford's largest assembly plant. In the 1950s, there weren't pollution controls like there are now, and the air was highly toxic. Just think about the toxic water problems in Flint, Michigan today. Once I got the lead out of my system, by following a protocol that included infrared saunas and the right nutrition that acted as a magnet to pull the lead out, I went back to running marathons and triathlons. Although I had a healthy lifestyle and ate good quality foods, every once in a while I would feel like I needed more calories because my blood sugar would get low from exercising so aggressively. I knew the fix. I'd eat half a dozen apple cinnamon donuts on the way to do a 15-mile run. After all, I'd burn it all off with the 2+ hours of running. Nothing wrong with that kind of logic, right? Then I had myself tested, using a protocol similar to the one you'll learn about in this book, and the results came back and astounded me. 3 different elevated levels of antibodies that would affect my brain function over time. I had elevated antibodies to myelin basic protein, which is the mechanism for developing multiple sclerosis. I had elevated antibodies to cerebellar peptides, linked to a loss of balance and brain processing speed, and I had elevated antibodies.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?